So let me take you on a journey. I'm going to kind of shorten my presentation. I have my quality assurance person over here to make sure I give you a quality speech. His name is Jacob. He just told me that, and I told him I would integrate it into the speech. He said, I'm only here to eat breakfast and make sure that you give a good speech. So first I want to just take you on a journey that I've gone through. I was born and raised in South LA during the 80s when LA was considered the gang capital of the nation, the murder capital of the nation, and the crack capital of the nation. You see murder, shootings, the battering ram. How many people remember the battering ram? All those things were going on when I was a teenager. I literally saw the battering ram knock down half a house, and I was maybe 20 feet away. Growing up during that time, that's what my world was. Gangs were prevalent where I grew up. My mom still owns her home in South Central LA. It's changed some. By the time I was 16, I had been shot twice. I'd been stabbed. And I was given as good as I got. So it wasn't like I was walking around the neighborhood with a Bible and ice cream cone. I was a minister to my neighborhood also. By the time I was 18, I had committed a murder in the furthest with the gang that I was involved in. And I was sentenced to life in prison and sent away. To me, I thought that was it, end of the game. When I hit the prison system, I saw so many people that looked like me. But a couple of things transpired, or were transpiring during this time. One, 28 days after I was arrested, my daughter was born. I knew she was on the way, but I was still involved with gangs and drugs and all those things that led me to prison. So that was one. Two, the system, as we all know, had been growing exponentially. Pelican Bay had opened up the year that I went in. Donovan Correctional Facility had opened up, and a number of other facilities opened up shortly after 90, 91, 92, like Lancaster. These things were all happening at the same time. And so when I went into prison, I looked around and I saw a lot of people that looked just like me, my age. And I remember just feeling like this isn't right. I didn't know how to verbally convey it, but I thought to myself, this isn't right. Even though I was in the mind of a person that was immersed in gang culture and drug dealing, it was just like, this is too many people that look like me in this one spot. And then when you look around the prison yard, what it reminded me of was projects. And I'm standing there one day and I was like, this is not right. But I continued down that path while in prison. I have a picture that sits on my desk. It's of me and my mom on March 22nd, 1990. She came to visit me. I was in solitary prison. And I told my mom, I was a high school dropout. I could barely read and write, and I'm sitting across from her. And I told her, I said, I want to change how this system works. My mom looked at me. My mom has a bachelor's degree in nursing, owned her own home. I'm first generation Californian. She came from the South. And so she was about education. She was about school. And she looked at me, she said, if you really want to change this, you need to go to school. I said, you need to pursue your education. And I said, how am I going to do that for you? She said, it doesn't matter where you're at. Figure it out. I had not listened to my mom most of my life. That's why I was in prison. Bang, bang, dope deal. When she told me not to go out, I'd wait for her to fall asleep, or she went to work, I'd go out the back window, I did all the things she told me not to do. In this instance, I sat there, I'm like, how do I figure this out? She said, after you get your education, this is all in one visit, after you get your education, you have to figure out how to get the money to change the system. And my thinking, my limited thinking, I was thinking, okay, maybe I get the lottery, maybe somebody will leave me some money, maybe Oprah will give me some money. It was a bunch of different thoughts. I didn't know any of these things, but I knew at 20 that I wanted to change the system, and my mom was giving me keys that I needed. Went back from that visit, did the same stuff on the yard, gang banging, all the stuff that led me there in the first place, and that became like a conversation my mom and I had, but it kept playing in my head. Every time I got in trouble, every time I saw something that I knew wasn't right. 7 years into my sentence, my daughter, who at I had first held in Solid Ash Prison visiting as a baby. Came to visit me. She had visited me many times before. I'd like pop out of the back door like that in my prison blues, and she'd be sitting in the visiting room, and she'd get up and she'd run, and I'd grab her, and we'd laugh, and we'd go sit down, and we'd color, play checkers. That was a regular visit. That's how I bonded with my daughter. 7 years in, she's come to visit me for her 7th birthday. And the Thursday before the visit, I started a ride on the yard. So now I'm in administrative segregation. I can still get my visit, except it won't be 6 hours, it'll be 2. And I remember I didn't get to pop out the door. I'm behind the glass. And when she walks in, I'm standing there looking at her walk in, and she's looking. Where's she at? Usually comes out that door right there. She's looking, and then she sees me behind the glass. She kind of looks like, what are you doing back there? So my mom was right behind her, so she starts walking over there. And she climbs up on the little stools, and she picks up the phone, and she says, Daddy, why are you back there? Can I hug you? And it just amped me up. I'm back there because I was still doing the same stuff that I was doing that brought me here when you were coming into the world, because I had to put you first. And she's looking at me before she wants to answer. And I told her, I said, Daddy got in some trouble. That was the truth, but it was also huge omissions. Daddy did get in trouble, but Daddy has not been put you first. Daddy has not been considering what he does and how it will affect you or anybody that loves you or loves him. Daddy's being an idiot. That would have been the truth, full disclosure. She looked at me, and you can imagine how many people have children. 7 years old. No judgment. All she wanted was a hug. She didn't judge me. She wasn't mad at me. She just looked at me and said, could you not get in trouble so when I come back I can have a hug? And it made me cry. And I just nodded. My mom takes the phone from me. She looks at me and she says, you understand that everything you do affects the people that love you the most. And all I could do was nod because I knew my voice was right. We finished our visit, talked about like stuff that wasn't important because my daughter was present. And when they were leaving, I always remember she had these little white vans on. And she's walking, I'm watching them walk, and so all I can see is her and her little white vans, and she stops. I told her I would try, and she looks at me and she says, try hard. I didn't immediately change. Did not immediately change. As a matter of fact, I went back to the hole probably 2 years later after I got out, still involved with the same stuff. But this time when I went, when they put the cuffs on me, I said, damn, you're never gonna go home if you keep doing this. And instead of the bravado, usually you get handcuffed and they escort you around across the yard, like, yeah, I did that. Now I have done it. And it's in my head now. I'm in this cycle that I gotta change and I don't know how yet. And so when I got out of the hole this time, I remember a program. It was a program called Alternatives to Violence. And I remember they taught us how to de-escalate violent situations. When I originally went to this program, I didn't go in because I wanted to learn how to de-escalate violence. I went in the program so I could get out of my cell. So it was really just manipulation. I was like, I'm not even paying attention. I heard a couple of things, but I remember that one piece. And so my mission when I got out of the hole this time was to find that program. And I found it. And that was my first steps. And all the things that my mom told me, pursue your education. I went and got my GED. I didn't know what it meant to score in the 95th and 98th percentile and the 99th percentile. And so I asked my instructor, what does this mean? And he just like, old hippie guy named Mr. Stanley, he just went crazy. He was, do you know how, like you studied, he said that means you beat 99% or 94% of the people that are in high school. Like that's what it's based on. I'm like, but I'm not that smart. And he said, that's what you think. It's not about being smart. You study, you applied yourself. Keep doing that. Now you need to go to college. College. People like me don't go to college. People like me don't go to college. And he looked at me and said, why not? I didn't have the answer for him. It was just what I thought. He said, look, take the entrance exam, we'll study for it. And I didn't want to study for it, I was afraid that I would fail. He said, if we fail, we'll fail together. Like, okay, I'm blaming on him. That's what I was thinking. And so, took the entrance exam and aced it. I got to take 2 college courses, and then they eliminated college in prison. Pell Grants were gone. But it had opened a hunger in me. Opened a desire. I saw a window. It's almost like you look out the window and you see the ocean, you see the world. I said, I wanted more. In my mind, I didn't realize all these things were going on. I just knew I wanted more school. And so I reached out to my mom and I told her, could you find me some books on correspondence courses, because that's what Mrs. Stanley's did. And she sent me this book. They don't even publish it anymore. I love this book. It was called The Guerrilla Handbook on Correspondence Courses. It had every single correspondence course in the United States. It costs money, which I don't have much of. But I'm in PIA, so I'll find one of these cheaper courses that I can pay monthly, and I enroll that way. I didn't tell my family I was in PIA, if you don't know, it's Prison Industry Authority. You get paid the astronomical amount of 95 cents an hour. And so in prison, as we say, I was balling.
Yeah.
But I was using this money to pay for my education. And as I'm going through it, I'm like, this is great, I'm learning, but I'm still connected to the game. But I started changing in such a way where when it was time to go to the yard, the homies would come to study, come out, I know I'm studying. I'm not going to use the language that we use in soccer. It was like, really? Called me nerd, swear, and my old gang mentality made me want to fight them because now I was attaching my importance to education. As I continued to educate myself, I started realizing, like, if I keep going down this path, I'll never go home. And at this time, if you know the prison system, less than 1/10 of 1% of lifers were going home. The lifer that went home was the uniform. You heard about him, or heard of them, but you never saw him. You never saw him. Such and such went home, he was a lifer, she was a lifer. But you never saw him, because so few were going home. I wanted to be in that few. I wanted to figure out how to change the system now. My first degree was in paralegal studies, because I wanted to figure out how to fight the system and get out. But I still hadn't changed enough of my thinking to where I was ready to go home. We went on lockdown, and it was a long lockdown. A guy got murdered on the yard, bad drug deal, and I couldn't go to work to pay for my tuition. So I wrote my older sister and asked her if she could send me some money for school. Now, remember, my sisters remember me as the gang member, the dope dealer. Like, I had nicknames like Notorious, which I did not know the meaning of and had to look up when I was called that as a teenager. And so she was like, you need money for school. Nobody goes to school in prison. So she comes to visit me. And when she comes to visit me, before I sent her my GED certificate, my transcripts, everything. She comes to visit. When she walks in, she's got the whole family with her. And they sit down there like, you been going to school? I'm like, yeah, almost like it was a bad thing. That's what it felt like to me, because like, you been going to school? Yeah. And my mom looked at me, she said, why don't you say anything? She said, send me everything and we'll figure out how to pay for it. You just keep getting good grades. And that just propelled me. And this was what my mom had always told me, go to school, go to school, go to school, go to school. As I'm doing this, all of my homeboys around me are beginning to watch. The system begins to change a little bit. People want college, and so we start figuring out amongst ourselves how to create a college program. Remember, the Pell Grant just came back, matter of fact, this year, or last year. And so we're trying to figure out how can we go to college, how can we do better, but we're still attached to this gang stuff. We were able to get college programs for associate's degrees, not prestigious colleges yet, on New York. And I'm watching this ecosystem change. Whereas before we'd be sitting on the bench, talking about lowriders and dope dealing and all the stuff that we did, everybody had the same story. Everybody had 10 lowriders, a mansion, a pocket full of gold, just different times, different lowriders. But then the conversation started changing to Pavlov's theory. What is that? You start hearing these college conversations instead of gang conversations. I don't care what bench you was on or what set it was now. You were having some of these conversations because more and more people were getting in college. Although these are not, these college classes, in order for us to participate, we would have to photocopy the books. And we did that by some rule breaking, I'll say. But it was changing, like we're literally changing the system inside, and we don't even realize what we're doing. What happened was that window opened, and we realized this is something that we've always wanted, but we just never presented, we never saw it. Like if you can think, if you never saw an architect before, could you imagine being one? And so I'm seeing all these things happening, and I'm like, and it's in real time, and I'm like, wow, it's changing. They had a big shakeup on the yard where they moved one big group onto the yard, and it looks like there was going to be a big riot. The administration seems like they were going to let it happen. And so there was a call for all of the homies to come to the yard to defend our territory, the benches that we claimed in prison. Went out, as I always do, 10 toes on deck. I just finished my second degree. I was trying to figure out how to do a bachelor's degree. And I'm standing there with two of my big homies, a guy named Sam and a guy named Charles. And we're waiting to see what's going to happen. We already have a plan. We have people staged around the yard. We know who's going to go first, who's going to go second. We've already packed up our stuff. We already know we're going to the hole. We're prepared for this. I'm like, I got 7 years clean. Haven't been to go, and I'm standing, and I'm like, I'm just going to mess it all over a bench and a telephone that does not even belong to me. I'm standing there thinking to myself, I'm about to let my daughter down again, my mom, and myself. I'm literally standing here on the yard with a knife, waiting. Our homies go to the middle of the field, there's a parlay, and peace is reached without a riot. And when we get ready to go back in, I tell the two guys, Sam and Charles, I said, when we come back, I want to have a meeting. He said, for what? I just want to talk to the homies. I had made up in my mind, I'm not doing this no more. So the next day, as soon as we come to y'all, like if you've been in prison, you know where everybody stands their knives and stuff. Everybody, the yard moves a certain way. So I made sure I was one of the first ones out. We used to get these little cardboard boxes for lunch. And I went and gathered 3 knives. And when the homies came out, Sam was sitting here, Charles was sitting there. And we were from the same clique and grew up together, so I had favor with these guys, so to speak. And so, and I'll say in layman's terms, I'll say, they're like, what's up? And trust me, this is not the language we use, but I'm trying not to go too far into the language. Like, what the F did you call all of this for? Because the whole car, as we call it, the whole clique is out there. I dropped the box in front of him. I said, I got it, in Swahili, kisu is called a knife. I said, I have one there, 2 and 5. I'm done. What you mean you're done? I'm not supposed to come back out here no more. We were ready to go to the hole to kill a guy over those phones. Those are state phones. If the police come out here right now and tell us to get off these benches, we're gonna get off. If the police come out here right now and we call correction officers police, if they come tell us to get off these phones, we're gonna get off. And we're not gonna do nothing about it. And we ready to fight them dudes over there, over these phones for what? Sam looked at me. Now Sam is my big brother. But he also has an audience of dudes. It's the gang, it's the hood. Sam's exact words, so he read me. Sam's known me since I was like maybe 11, so we knew each other from the streets. Sam looked at me, he looked at Charles. So Sam's nickname is Devil. Charles' nickname is Lil. Lil. Looks at Lil and he's like, looks at me and said, get the fuck home. Now one, it's a challenge because of the way I was just spoken to. This is still my big homie. But 2, he just gave me a door. And before I walk, he said, just remember, when you walk away, those phones, these benches, and when we sit at, none of that is yours no more. You done. And in my mind, real quick, I'm like, okay, he's giving me an avenue. My ego's like bruised a little bit because the way he spoke to me, and he spoke to me in front. This is your chance. Take it. I Still had the knife on me though.
Like the game.
And I walked the rest of the yard waiting for somebody to come get me. Or try to stab me, and that's how it was going to end. Nothing happened. Yard recall goes, I come back to the yard that night because I don't want to wait. I want whatever's going to happen to me. And Sam comes to me, and it's just him. And so when he comes to me, usually your friend is the distraction. Now you're like looking, okay, who's coming? He was like, nobody's going to come. That's I gave you my word. Just don't get caught up, man, because if you get caught up, our families know each other. He said, I can't let you go by yourself. So don't take me down with you. He's like, nobody gonna mess with you. Just keep doing what you're doing. We had conversations after that about what I believe we could do as far as getting out of prison, but we had to let this piece go. I probably had the worst disciplinary record out of all of us, but I also had the most educational program. So everybody believed that I would go home first. And eventually, things began to change. More college programs, more self-help. We created a culture of self-help. Jacob, my speech evaluator, was on the yard with me. I used to see Jacob as an enemy. Jacob, he was a sworn enemy. And trust me, I used to do that big dude like that. Knock his block off the first chance I get. We began to facilitate together, create programs together, and now I consider him one of my best friends. But decades ago, that's Jacob and I were on two different sides. And so, as these programs continued, every time I went to the board of parole hearings 9 times. But the system inside it changed. And the system did not change itself, we changed it. With the programs that we created, with the line that we pushed. When we get a little homie on the yard, I was no longer affiliated, but because I was doing all the programs and I was running groups and stuff, I was the guy to go to. I was the guy to help you figure out how to go to court. I was the guy that would help you do a lot of stuff, get back and forth. And so when a young homie would come, like, this little square fool over here, they talking about me. No, that's the homie. And they show old pictures and stuff. Fool too square to be like, he can help you. And then sure enough, of that group, I was the first one to leave. When I got found suitable, the governor could take it, it's called being found suitable for parole. This was 2011. Some people had went before me, but in this group, I was one of the first ones that was really immersed in all of this stuff. And so the question was, is the governor going to take his date? And the day that I walked out, I gave everything that I had away, and I had 3 youngsters pull up on me as I'm walking down the hallway. And they was like, hey, OG, we respect how you got in. You stepped back and you never waited. I know these, I didn't do it for these youngsters, I did it for me. But I also saw what it was doing for others. And when they told me that, I was like, wow, like they've been watching. Without intention, like my intention was just to get out of prison and go be with my family and my daughter. But when it came that time, I started saying, I'm gonna come back and help. We've already changed this system. We can continue to change this system. I come home January 12, 2012. Very few writers have come home since at this time. Matter of fact, one of us sitting before us right now. Very few, I mean, maybe 100, maybe 200 maybe. I don't even think it was 200. It was few of us that had come home. And there were no programs. There were no jobs, no careers. You'd be lucky if you could get something at McDonald's. We didn't have reentry like we have today. And so I told the people that I left that I would not forget them, that I would figure out how to help them. Because I saw what we were able to do on the inside. I remember hugging my daughter the day that I got to come home. She cried. She said, you kept your promise. Now I have, and I was sharing this, I have 3 grandkids. I have a 16-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 5-year-old. I don't have favorites, but I love the 5-year-old because he's adventurous. My 16-year-old is really moody, as all 16-year-olds are. The 13-year-old is kind of like getting to that point. And so I'm like, okay, you're gonna go through that transformation out, and I just hang out with the young one. And then when you turn about 18 or 19, you'll start talking in 4 sentences again. They don't get it. But beginning to do this work and understanding how we can transform the system, changing the system, And so the first thing that I started doing was just going around and trying to figure out how to get into this work. One of the first places that actually gave me an opportunity, but I didn't get paid, was Shields for Families. They allowed me to mentor the young people that were coming up that were in the juvenile system. And I could get them to sit down and be in groups saying, how did you do that? I just relate to them. What I went through, I share I went through and tell them my story, and we just hang out. We run some of the groups that we did just at a faster pace, like Alternative Providers. And then I had an opportunity to work with Friends Outside in Los Angeles. But Friends Outside does great work, but it focuses only on the adult system, which I appreciated and I learned a great deal from, but it wasn't where my heart was at. I still was 20-year-old Sam before his 21st birthday wanting to change the system so young people like me would go inside, even though I was 42 at the time, but I still identify with the youngsters. And so I'm trying to figure out, like, there's no way you're going to be able to get into the juvenile halls with a murder conviction and on parole. Impossible. I meet Scott Butler. You know Scott's kind of crazy in the sense that he thinks he can change everything. He's a complicated guy, but he's got a good spirit. He's just difficult to deal with sometimes. He travels at 1,000,000 miles an hour, but he knows a lot of people. And so when I first meet him, he asked, would I help some of the young people that he knows get ready to go into jobs? I said, sure, because I was running what we call career readiness workshops. And so I went to ARC, and it had just opened. It was nowhere near where it's at now, and I just started running these workshops. Then he calls me one day, and he says, can you go into county jail with me? No. I said, why not? I said, Scott, I'm on parole. So? I said, Scott, I'm on parole for murder. So? I said, if I go on county jail grounds, they will arrest me, and they will reinstate my life sentence. Is that what you want? And Scott said, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I said, that's how the law works, Scott. He hangs up. That's how he operates. And so now I'm like, well, he got an attitude because I can't go, F you, man. He called me back like maybe 25 minutes later, rattles off my CDC number, which I've never told him. And the first thing in my mind, remember, I'm fresh out. I said, dude, FBI or something? He said, I talked to the Secretary of Corrections. I'm going to have a clearance for you to go in. And I talked to the undersheriff. Her name is Terry McDonald. Still not sure what I'm going to something like this will be a trap. I don't really know this white guy. I don't. And he's like, will you go in for me? It will help people like you. That hooked me. I go in, Scott. We go in, we do this presentation. It's impactful. And when we walk out, this is not what I want to do, but I'm doing it because I want to help people like you. When we walk out, Terry gives me a hug. Thank you so much. She's in the sheriff's uniform, and it's really difficult to hug a person that's in the sheriff's uniform. It's like, I'm telling you what I'm going through at the time. So she says, if there's ever anything I can help you with, let me know. Here's my card on the back of my personal number. Okay, thank you. You never want to do this part. That's my thinking at the time, just sharing. So I leave, and I think maybe 4 or 5 months later, Terry gets transferred. She's now the chief of probation. Where's that card? I called. Can I have a meeting? I'd like to meet with you. It's about mentoring. She said, sure. I go down to Downey, and she says, how can I help you? And I tell her, I said, I want to mentor kids that are in juvenile hall. And she said, well, what are you going to say? I'm going to use my lived experience, and I'm going to start working on some curriculums then, but I really want to do this part. And she said, okay. And she said, how can I help you? And I said, they won't fit. And she said, why? I said, I'm on parole, and I'm on parole for murder. And she says, okay, that might be a little difficult, but I think as a chief, I can take care of it. And she cleared it. And I've been going in every Saturday since then. It was beginning to change the ecosystem. This was almost 10 years ago. I was the only one going in, and I would just go in and I would talk to the kids, the young people. Some were kids, some were young people. When I say young, they were at least over 18. Share my story and tell them I just want to help you out teach them public speaking, finance, how to write, how to debate. And I would just come up with stuff for them to learn, encourage them to go to school, and like push them. The same thing that I said. Remember I said a while back, people like me don't go to college? I'm not supporting them. Says who? I'm not living on. Says who? The first kid that graduated from college in Barry J. Notto Juvenile Hall is now my office manager in Sacramento. The second one lives in Houston, and he's an influencer and makes easy 6 figures with YouTube. He figured it out. I won't even go to law school. He wanted to do this, and I'm still trying to get him to go to law school. I said, do both. And he was like, let me show you my bank account. I'm like, maybe I should become your influencer. But the system, ecosystem is begins to change. I reach out to more people like me that are formerly incarcerated to come in. I'm trying to figure out how to get funding. I'm trying to get people to support it. Remember, this is years of work. Before we can transform or get in for a time there, I'm asked the question, what made you change? I'm sitting in the room at the ARC office, what made you change? I said I had mentors, I had an opportunity to go into programs. And they said, mentors? I said, yeah, there were more people like me going in prison, we could change that. We could change how people do programming inside prisons. The person who's asking me all these questions, me and Scott, said, you really think that? I said, yeah, I can prove it if I have the money. He said, oh, really? That's a challenge. He said, sit, our grandmother at the time was a lady in Kate with Kate. Sit with Kate and draft your concept paper off. Let's see what you do. I'm like, who's gonna get the money? He said, just do the concept of what you believe will work. I'm like, all right, so we sat down, took us 2 days, built out the programming, and then we wrote a grant for it. In the program, I specifically said that people that are formerly incarcerated, that were both on and off parole, that had served life sentences, would be the facilitators inside the CDCR. They're never going to finish this grant. Not going to happen. About 60 days go by, Scott walks by my desk and he drops, he's like, we got the money. What do you think should run the program? I said, what money? He said, a mentor program in prison. Let me find that page where I said they would be on life parole. It's in it. Let me see who signed. Oh, it's signed. He said, who should run the program? I'm like, really? He said, well, you better start recruiting. This was the first step in California, and he talked about credible messages. We call it the Hope and Redemption Team. So we started in 2017. We're still going in juvenile halls, but we're only going in 2 hours a day on the weekends. Nothing solidified, no recognition. We're just going in, even though we're bringing kids home, getting them, like, you're not getting anything out of this other than the outcomes, and that's all we really needed because we really wanted to help our kids. So we started going into the prisons. 2017, 2018, 2019, where funding is about to run out, and the governor goes to the wardens meeting. They have one every quarter, and the governor asks all the wardens in the state, what program do you want? What program is the best program and that you want in every prison? Every warden said the Hope and Redemption Team. The following year, we got a 3-year, $10.5 million grant to run programs in every single prison. Because we could show through ComStats that it decreased the number of violence, it decreased the number of violent incidents, it decreased the number of people that were getting involved in violence that went through our program, and it increased the number that were being found suitable for parole. Fast forward, last year, and there's a conversation that's been going on. So we see what's happening with this program. We see what's happening with credible messengers and other places in the United States. New Beginnings, if you haven't seen New Beginnings, Google it. And so now the conversation in LA County starts. Credible messengers, credible messengers, credible messengers. Well, we're already doing it. Okay, we're going to give a number of organizations grants to do this, and now we're in the juvenile halls and camps in LA after it becomes SYTA. So now you have people that are formerly incarcerated mentoring our young people, transforming it. The system is transforming. It's changing. We were at the end of our contract with CDCR this year. The end. And the state legislature asked, like, well, what are you going to do? Like, well, at the end of the contract, I'm going to have to shift people around the organization. So you're not going to continue the program? Like, you don't have a contract anymore. Well, you need to make sure that that program works. So the state, even in difficult times, has not funded that team again to run programs because the data, I can tell you a bunch of beautiful stories. The data is showing when they come home, they don't recidivate. When they come home, they go into careers. When they come home, they add public safety to our communities. When they come home, they help us have better in our communities. So keep doing what you're doing. So that's now refunded. The credible messenger contract, because it was a one-year pilot program, and the outcomes have been pretty good. Not as good as it could be, but that's been refunded. And yesterday, I just found this out yesterday. The DOJ, if you know, probation is under a settlement decree for violating the BSCC requirements and all those things, right? So there's a Department of Justice person that works with them to create all these different things. And yesterday they found out that all of our credible messengers have been trained in DBT, which is an evidence-based dialectical behavioral therapy. Who made you do that? It's the stuff that helped us. We studied it. So we want to train the best we want to make our credible messengers better than anybody else. And what the monitor for the Department of Justice told us yesterday, nowhere else in the United States are they doing that. That ecosystem that we're talking about, changing it, the ecosystem that we're changing, that's us. How many people in this room have done any time? Raise your hand. If you don't, hey, you're part of this transformation of our systems to make it better. There's an old African proverb, many of you know, probably know. It takes an entire village to what? To raise a child. These kids that are in our SYTF and our juvenile halls, those are our children. They may not be our blood kin, but they are our children. They're part of our village. Whether it be Long Beach, Compton, Inglewood, South Central, this is our village. These are our villagers, and these are our children. And so as we change that ecosystem, and how it works, we help them heal, we help them come home, we help them be the best version of themselves, and we continue to enhance public safety. But it takes all of us. It takes every single one of us to do our part. Whether it's something as simple as making sure that if I have an extra job that I can offer, that's one thing. Being a mentor, that's another thing. If you're a lifeguard, and on the weekends you don't have anything to do, go to the neighborhood pool and volunteer. Here are my credentials. I'm certified. Like, there's so many different things that we can do as individuals. And we can do it where it doesn't, if I have my grandson, I'm a lifeguard. My grandson loves to swim. I'll stay right here. I know he's got his little floaties and stuff where I can watch you. And there are instructors there. He's at the pool doing what he wants to do. And I'm there volunteering for my community. I'm spending time with my grandson and I'm providing a service for our community. Like, I'm doing the two things that I want to do. I think that there are ways for all of us to get involved and change our ecosystem continuously, whether it's inside prisons, juvenile halls, or in our community. But in order for us to do it, we have to be willing to give a little bit of ourselves. And I promise you this, if you give a little bit of yourself, it will come back to you tenfold in ways you can never imagine. I'm gonna close with this. I'm on the Probation Oversight Commission. I'm also on the Juvenile Justice Coordinating Council. And so yesterday I was at a POC meeting that was jointly held with the Sheriff's Civilian Oversight Commission. So I meet all the commissioners, shake their hands, hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you, and sit down. And then they announce everybody, they do roll call, and I have to leave to go to my next meeting. And as I'm walking out, about to get my car, and somebody yells, Sam! It's a lady, I'm like, I go back there, yes ma'am. I want to thank you. For what? You helped my son come home. I almost cried. I don't need anything other than knowing that another mom has her son home and that he's helping make our community whole and safe. That's what drives me. That's what I hope to drive you. And I'm going to close and open up for any questions that you have. The key to this is changing our ecosystem, and all of us play a role.